In the Sonia Duval team, they've become historically accustomed to doubles. The dopers Simone and Piepoli, the dopers Rico and Piepoli, the dopers Cobo and Piepoli, and the squeaky cleans Adam Yates and Joao Almeida, and of course the most kitsch-directed duo of the epocha, Dracula Gianetti and Moonlight Machin. However, all these doubles are overshadowed by a historical figure that is not only unparalleled in the history of Sonia, but also in the history of cycling. We are obviously talking about the champion of the Giro d'Italia 2024, Tadej Pogacar. As we had already announced, Poggy is preparing in the mountains of the French Alps for the Tour de France, enjoying his classic jam-filled toast for breakfast, accompanied by croissants and low-quality lager beers, just as he likes it. He is performing superlatively well at the moment, as the Slovenian alien himself has shown on his social networks, all in a bid to scare the Danish anchovy just a little bit more. In fact, on Strava he's posting some of those workouts, and the data, well, it's quite enlightening. His level seems to be at 100%, and yet it is still going to increase even more in the face of the Tour de France. We already know several of his tricks. Listening to Eminem rapping Houdini on his earpiece. Oh, and then enjoying the embrace of those wonderful flying aero bras for time trials. And plus his wonderful diet, as we mentioned before. But what is Poggy's secret that makes him 130% clean and impossible for his rivals to copy? Stay tuned to the video and you'll find out. But first, I'd like to remind you that we are giving away a Van Rijssel bike. And for your name to go in the hat for the prize draw, all you have to do is subscribe to our new Celebs Highlights channel, watch the videos until the end, and leave a comment related to them. Now, I'm not interested in comments along the lines of, "I'm here for the bike, mate." Those won't be entered in the draw. Now, remember, subscribe because the raffle will end when the Tour de France ends. It's a unique opportunity for you to boast about riding the most envied bike by today's riders. And now, let's get back to Pogacar. There's no doubt that Poggy is a self-confident guy. We usually see him ever so relaxed before the competitions. But once he participates, he doesn't mind telling off anyone who does something he doesn't like, or he'll attack to catch up with one of his fans, and then show him just who's the best on the road, and then give him a jersey and a pat on the back. This mental aspect is fundamental in the face of a competition like the Grand Boucle, which is not only about showing who's the fastest cyclist, it's also a mental game in front of the rivals and the press and the industry leaders. This mental strength can come in very handy for Poggy when he's up against rivals that he already has kneeling before him, like Enric Mas or Geraint Thomas or Ben O'Connor, but not against his nemesis, the Dane. Always the Dane. You see, the Visma rider is not called the anchovy simply for having cleaned fish in the past. Look at his face as he climbs the hardest coals on the planet. Is it not identical to that of a fresh fish that you can buy in your local supermarket? A total poker face. Even if he's suffering like a mule on a plough, you can't read mental weakness in Jonas's face. In that aspect, he is just as strong as Tadej. They're totally equal. So where is the differential? Joseber Elgezabal, the masseur of the Sonia Duval team, is the first to tell us what is the main difference between Urs Zigaard's boyfriend and his rivals. It's not that his nights are more intense. It's not that the coffees he drinks in the morning suit him better. It's not that the chambers and hypoxic rooms where he trains and recovers are making a difference. No. And of course, God forbid we mention it, it's not a sophisticated doping plan. Who could suspect the Sonia team? Not I. We are talking about an intrinsic secret that only good old Poggy has and that Elgezabal himself has not seen in more than 2 decades massaging numerous professional cyclists. For this bearded Basque, the number 1 in the UCI rankings, has a totally unique and privileged musculature, different from the rest of the cyclists in the world. We might wonder if he has green blood in his veins, but the reality is different. Elgezabal doesn't talk about muscle volume, he doesn't talk about physical strength, he talks about recovery after effort. For this expert who has massaged the legs and arms of several doped riders, Poggy does not need the use of substances that improved the recovery of cyclists in the Grand Tours of cycling past. Elgezabal not only contradicts the great legends of sport and drugs such as Jacques Anquetil or Lance Armstrong, who claimed that you could not win a Tour de France without doping. Instead, Joseba explains that the main reason that makes him into a true class of one athlete is his recovery. Elgezabal tells us that unlike other cyclists, Poggi improves day by day. He's the only rider on the planet who does not suffer from the passage of time and multiple days in a stage race. This explains why he arrived fresh as a daisy after all the mountain stages in the 24 Giro. And to think there were some uninformed, cynical people who thought it was all due to drugs. Now, in addition to hardly suffering from muscle fatigue, Poggi has been sculpting his figure as a man for 3-week races by doing Grand Tour after Grand Tour, and that, for the Basque Masseur, will ensure that Poggi of the Tour de France 2024 will be even better than Poggi of Giro d'Italia 2024, because, as if he were Michelangelo's David, as he sculpts his musculature, he becomes ever more imposing. But this news, which possibly many of you did not know, is common knowledge in the peloton. And in fact, one of his rivals in the classics this season told us about it. We're talking about Maxime van Gils, the 24-year-old Belgian who's exploded this season, winning the Eschborn-Frankfurt or the Vuelta a Andalusia, who finished 7th in San Remo, 4th in Liège, 3rd in Flèche Wallonne and Strade Bianche. Precisely in that race, the Lotto rider faced a Poggi who attacked 81 kilometres from the finish, and they didn't see him again, not until the Piazza del Campo in Siena. And there, on the podium, Van Gils was able to talk a little with the Slovenian alien. The Belgian told him that he was exhausted, but Poggi laughingly told him that he wasn't tired at all. It had all just been a training session for him. This alerted Van Gils, who could not believe his ears. He had to spend 3 days in bed to recover from his exertion, and yet he'd been teased by the Slovenian to his face. He didn't understand why. And then, at the next Lotto training camp, while the weeping Stefan Oehlers was tuning up the next big thing, Jano Wieder, Van Gils asked the team nutritionist, Britt Lombrecht and Laura van Genekte, what was wrong with Poggi, what was special? Was it true that he wasn't even tired after moving such terrifying watts after 81 kilometres of air in his face? The specialist answered quite knowingly, "Don't you know, Maxime? That alien has a unique musculature. His muscles naturally produce less lactate." There was the explanation. Just what Dr. Inigo San Millán had claimed about Tadej. He said that he'd flushed out lactate better than any other cyclist he'd seen. It's genetic. The answer was there in front of us, and we hadn't seen it. And now, thanks to Elgezabal and Van Gils, we have the answer. Let us know in the comments what you thought. And subscribe to the channel because you know we are in for an epic Tour de France 2024.